What's up? A few weeks ago when I was in Seoul, South Korea, I ate a lot of different foods.
It's salty and sour.
But at the near top of that list was KFC, or Korean fried chicken. And compared to the Southern American fried chicken that I'm used to, KFC is lighter, crispier, and at least half of the time is sauced with a sweet and savory Gochujang sauce. So today, I'm gonna show you how to recreate the fried chicken I had in Seoul at home.
To get started, I'll need some chicken. Specifically, I've got 2.5 pounds or 1.25 kilos of bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs here. I'm going for a singular cut of chicken as opposed to the whole thing because in the US, in general, our chickens tend to be too large. In Korea, they use very small chickens for their fried chicken, and as a result, their chicken is more tender and juicier than what I'm used to. I assume that's because smaller birds tend to be younger and it's like a chicken veal situation. In contrast, in the US, our larger birds tend to have more ropey, tough breast meat, especially when it's fried. So I've opted to go with a bone-in version of dark meat because it's impossible to overcook and full of chickeny flavor. These thighs do have some excessive fat on them though, so I'll cut that off wherever I see it. That stuff's not gonna render correctly under the breading and will give us a flabby result. From there, I'll flip this over so the bone side is facing up, then using my favorite cheap chef's knife, I'll find the bone, line it up, and then give it a cleaver style chop to make a clean break. From there, I'll cut each half thigh in half one more time, and that'll give me 4 roughly 3-ounce pieces. Once I've got these 4 thighs broken down into 16 pieces like this, I'll season them up. Into the bowl with the chicken, I'll add 20 grams of salt, then 10 grams of grated fresh ginger, and then 10 grams of grated fresh garlic. For both the ginger and the garlic, I opted to grate them on my microplane. And to save time, as usual, I didn't peel this ginger because, you know, I'm a culinary bad boy, and since it's being grated into a pulp, you can't tell the difference between peeled and not. Next, I'll jump in to give these thighs a quick toss to combine, and once they're evenly coated with salt, garlic, and ginger like this, I'm gonna scoot this bowl over to the fridge so the chicken can cure for 15 to 20 minutes. While those get seasoned up, I'm gonna get my fryer set up. For that, I'll grab a 6.5 quart Dutch oven and add in 2.5 to 3 liters or 75 to 100 ounces of light olive oil. But Bri, why use a refined olive oil instead of something cheaper like canola? Well, the best fried chicken that I had in Seoul was at a place called BBQ. That stands for Best of the Best Quality, and their chicken is fried in olive oil. At BBQ, they're known for what they call the golden olive, and the chicken that I ordered was their golden original half and half. That's half regular unadulterated Korean fried chicken and half seasoned in their spicy gochujang sauce. Today, I'm gonna recreate that half and half plate and fry my chicken like theirs in olive oil. I think quite a few Korean fried chicken places use this olive oil method because it definitely provides a cleaner, less greasy taste, and it gives them the opportunity to market their fried chicken as, quote, healthier for you. After digging into that a little bit though, the science of polyunsaturated fats versus monosaturated fats is still very much out, and I'm not gonna weigh in on that, but I can say anecdotally that the flavor is noticeably cleaner, and that strongly contributes to the lighter overall vibe of Korean fried chicken that I really love. This bottle of olive oil cost me $14, and this bottle of canola was $4. That's about 3 times more expensive, so you'll have to decide for yourself if you want to spend the extra money for a slightly less greasy, slightly better tasting end product. For now, I'm going to preheat this pot of light olive oil over medium heat and then make the classic spicy gochujang sauce to create that half and half golden olive chicken. For that, into a saucepan, I'll combine 60 grams of soy sauce, 40 grams of sugar, 110 grams of honey, then 100 grams of gochujang. If you're not familiar, gochujang is a Korean fermented bean and chili paste. I think of it kind of as like spicy miso, and it's used in a lot of different Korean dishes. It has a salty, sweet, chili pepper umami flavor, and it goes with pretty much all meat and vegetables. Also, it lasts for months in the refrigerator, so if you buy yourself the smallest container, which is still probably like 16 ounces, you'll have plenty of time to use it up. Maybe try some of my weeknight Korean bibimbap, recipe to that linked in description. Behind the gochujang, I'll add in 60 grams of mirin, or a sweeter white wine would also work, then 30 grams of hot sauce, 20 grams of grated ginger, 20 grams of grated garlic, then lastly, I'll add in 200 grams of water and then move this saucepan over to the stove to bring it up to a simmer. In total, this is going to take about 15 minutes to reduce down into a sticky sauce that's going to coat our chicken really nicely without making it soggy. By the way, this sauce will have some heat to it, but isn't going to be like Korean grandma spicy. So if you want to throttle that up a little bit, I'd say add in some chili flakes or a little bit more hot sauce. After about 15 minutes of simmering, this sauce has been reduced by 4 or 5 times. It's looking thickened and the bubbles have gotten big and sticky. cookie. When it's still super hot like this, it'll be a touch on the thin side, but it should still coat the back of a spoon and leave a trail when I run my finger through it. For now, I'm gonna let this cool and then grab my chicken from the fridge. As you can see, it's gotten a little bit wet because the salt has drawn out some water. So I'm gonna flip this chicken out onto some paper towel to drain it, and then I'll come back with some more papes to blot it dry. Drier meat will create a stronger bond with the breading that will be a lot less likely to fall off once it's cooked. Speaking of breading, next I'll set aside my dried off chicken, then grab a medium bowl, and into that combine 350 grams of all-purpose flour, 350 grams of potato starch. This potato starch is kind of like the secret ingredient that separates American and Korean fried chicken. Potato starch inhibits gluten formation in the breading and also gets super brittle and crispy when it's fried, way more so than cornstarch or rice flour. I don't recommend skipping it, and you can buy it online, which I'll link to in the description below, or you can get it at an Asian grocery store like I did. Next, I'll add in 15 grams of salt, 10 grams of baking powder, 8 grams of onion powder, and then 8 grams of garlic powder. To mix this, I'll just jump in with a whisk and stir until things are well combined. Next, I'll grab a second medium bowl, and into that add about a third or a quarter of the dry mix that we just made. Then into that bowl, I'll add just enough water to make loose pancake batter, or try to replicate the viscosity of buttermilk if you can picture that. A quick whisk to combine, and that looks good. We don't want overly thick gloppy batter because that's going to allow too much breading to stick to the chicken, and Korean chicken is all about a light, thin coating. Once the batter's made, I'll grab my first bowl of dry mix, and then I'll add in a drizzle or about a cup's worth of the wet. Now I'll jump in to fluff that up and mix things together, and as this flour hydrates, I'm making sure to crumble it down into fine gravelly bits. This was looking a touch powdery though, so I added a little bit more batter, then I fluffed it up until I have only craggy bits and no powdery dry stuff to speak of. Now to bread this chicken, I'm going to set aside my bowl of craggy bits, then grab an empty small bowl. In goes all of my dried off chicken, then about a cup or so of flour. A quick toss to get those coated, and once they're well dusted, I'm going to grab them piece by piece and toss them back and forth in my hands to get as much of the excessive flour off as possible. Too much flour is going to make the breading less bonded to the surface of the meat, and that makes the breading likely to fall off. After I've got all 16 pieces lightly dusted, I'll drop my first piece into the wet batter. Then using a fork, I'll flip that around to get it evenly coated. Check the texture of the batter, by the way. It's still loose but has a grippy viscosity that stays with the chicken. I'll drain this piece off very, very well. Again, too much breading is not good. Then I'll move it over to my bowl of craggies. From there, I'll carefully sprinkle the craggies over the battered chicken, and I'm just looking to pick up whatever might stick naturally. No cakey thick bits, just dusty little cracks. A quick toss to loosen anything excessive, and then I'll move it over to a little baby sheet tray to hang out while I finish carefully hand breading the rest. Once I've got all 16 pieces of this chicken breaded up, I'll check the temperature of my oil. As you can see, it's at 350 F, so that means it's time to fry. But first, let me thank Seed for sponsoring this video. What we eat and ingest, like a clinically and scientifically validated symbiotic, for example, has a huge impact on our gut microbiome. Studies show that people who eat more than 30 types of plants have the highest gut microbial diversity, which is a sign of good gut and overall health. So by adding in more fruits and vegetables to your diet, you're also supporting your gut's health. One of the easiest ways for me, Bry, to diversify my diet is with a gut-friendly smoothie. Today I'm using blueberries, banana, kale, spirulina, chia seeds, and almond milk. And according to the periodic table of microbiome-friendly foods, most of these ingredients are mucho gut-friendly. Blueberries have antioxidant effects, bananas are rich in vitamins and potassium, and chia seeds are high in fiber. Another way I support my gut microbiome is by taking Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. That's a plant-based prebiotic and 24-strain probiotic in one that also promotes whole body benefits like heart and skin health. So to try Seed's DS-01 or read more about their scientifically validated probiotics, head to seed.com/Brian and use code Brian for 15% off your first month's supply. Carefully now, I'm going to drop these chickens in one at a time, laying them away from myself to mitigate hot oil splash. Normally I would do this with my spider and not my hands, but it's important to lay these chickens into their own little corners of the pot so that things don't get clumped up and stuck together. If they do, the breading would get ripped off and we would all be bummed out. Once I'm all loaded up, I'll set a timer for 7 minutes and mention that aside from potato starch, the other signature technique in Korean chicken is the double fry. That means that I'm going to cook this chicken 2 different times, once at a lower temp and then once at a higher temp. This two-step method gives us the most brittle, well-set, and extra crispy crust possible. The low heat dries out the breading while gently cooking the chicken, then the high heat sets the breading and makes it nicely golden brown. Once I've used my spider to gently loosen this chicken so that it's not stuck to the bottom of the pot, I'll check my temp. As you can see, this oil is rolling at about 300 F, and that's slightly lower than the 315 that I'm looking for, so I'll turn the burner up a little bit to try and raise this a few Fahrenheits. After about 7 minutes of frying, the breading has become well set up, but hasn't taken on any color. That's ideal. So from here, I'll scoop this out and move it over to a wire rack on a sheet tray to drain while I raise the temp of the oil for stage 2. Once my oil's up to 375 F like this, it's time to lower these in yet again to fry them hot for 5 more minutes. By the way, I am using my spider this time to do that because it keeps any oil splashing away from my hands. You'll notice that round 2 can get a little bit rowdy in terms of bubbling. That's because the rested chicken juices are finding their way into the hot oil. That's not a big deal. Just make sure you have at least as much space in your oil pot as I do here, or just use slightly less oil. After 5 more minutes, or 12 minutes in total of fry time, these chicken chunks are looking deeply golden brown. Another benefit to the potato starch that we used is that it takes a long time to take on color, so we get more time in the oil, making things extra crunchy and crisp. Overall, I'm super happy with the amount of breading and how crispy it's gotten. Basically, we've got a thin batter on the outside of the chicken holding a loose pattern of little craggies in place. Now, I'm going to take my still warm but not hot gochujang sauce and brush it on 8 of the 16 pieces. I like brushing here as opposed to throwing in a bowl with sauce for 2 reasons. One is that it allows for lighter saucing, and number 2, it's more gentle. Tossing breaks the breading apart and loosens it off of the meat. And after a little sesame seed and a little neat stacking in a bowl, that's our large order of half and half golden olive fried chicken. You've got some spicy heat on one side with a little sesame and some clean, pure, unadulterated crunch on the other. You guys, the original plain fried chicken is so freaking crispy, and the flavor is sick. It's clean, not greasy or heavy at all. It's a little salty and has a hint of garlic and ginger going on. Honestly, the sauce chicken is what got me in the door in the first place, and it delivers. It's a touch sweet, it's perfumed with ginger and garlic, it's got a mellow spiciness to it, and despite being coated in sauce, it's still super crunchy. Both the sauce and the original have a little bit of bone in there too, which I think is a quintessential fried chicken experience. Throw in a little bit of ice cold Hite beer, and all of a sudden you're having a pretty cool life, dudes. I hope you try this soon. Let's eat this thing.